went by my side. And did Ulpan, finished Ulpan, and then it was time to go try and find a job. Now, this was 2001. The whole high-tech economy crashed. There were no jobs for English speakers. And I managed to find a job in a dodgy online casino company doing the graveyard shift. Rolling as well. And there,
very touchy company.
Eventually went bankrupt after that. Basically there I met my business partner Anthony. Anthony Harris is an Australian guy as well. He also made Aliyah at the same time as me. He worked in a company like DataBank in Australia. He had an idea he was going to get a job in a DataBank type company in Israel, researched the market and saw the concept of DataBank didn't exist in Israel, which was a bit bizarre because all over the world it was a normal business practice. So he introduced me to the idea. At the same time, I was doing some part-time work with a South African guy who was in his 60s. He ran a company here for about 30 years, and he said to me, I'm looking to invest in companies. If you know of anything, come and speak to me. So we worked through the night doing the graveyard shift, each one covering for each other, building the business plan. We went to him and his partner. We introduced the idea. They said, nah, it will never work. Nobody in Israel will trust you. How are you going to sell? You don't have the language. And we said, you know what, just give us a shot. Like, what's there to lose here? They said, okay, go meet with our accountant, see what he thinks. So we went to their accountant, sat down, presented the concept. No, I don't think it's such a good idea. Wait a second, let me make a phone call to one of my clients. So he gets on the phone, he's on a 5-minute conversation, he gets off the phone and he goes, boys, you've got yourself a business. Now, he was on the phone to the director of IT of Lehman Brothers in Israel. And she said to him, oh my God, I've been looking everywhere for the service. The UK office is demanding we do it and there's no one in Israel that does it. So we then basically formed a partnership with the South African guy, his partner, myself and Anthony, each one of us owning 25% of the company. And we started the business in a tiny office in their offices, and we built our original vault in a basement, which was about 20 square meters, a very small place, in the basement of the building. And we just hammered the phones all day, 4 or 5 meetings a day, in English, speaking to the IT directors of companies, going in, making meetings, and introducing the concept, educating the market about what off-site storage of data was, because up until we came to Israel, it didn't exist here. And people just thought, you know what, I've got my backup, I'll leave it on site, or I'll take it home, I'll keep it under my bed. Failing to realize it's all the data of the company, and because it's data, it's worth money, and you can't just simply keep it under your bed. In that very small site, we signed some very big name companies like Teva and Orange and Ernst & Young, and the company was growing and growing and growing very quickly. We then, after 1.5 years, we moved to another site in Olim, which we thought would be there for 5 years. After 2 years, we were completely full. And we realized we needed something really big, so we built this unbelievable site, 3 floors underground in Petah Tikva. This was in 2007. And fast forward now, 9.5 years into the business, we set over 800 companies like IBM, HP, Dell, LR, Arkia, the police, this college, Telalivit University, whatever. Any company you know of is probably a DataBank customer. And it's been an amazing, amazing adventure as we've been going through it. Also last year we got an assured from Israel Bitachon to the safekeeping of military data, which was quite an achievement to get. And myself and Anthony are now in a very, very privileged position where we've got a positive cash flow business behind us. And we're actually in the process of setting up a forum or a group called Angel's Den. But basically, we want to be a forum where Olim, who are looking to set up a venture in Israel, but struggle to either find their feet in executing a project or finding funding, can present the business concept to us, and we can have the option to invest in them, or if we don't invest in them, also give them a helping hand about how to go about setting up in Israel. So, if any of you guys here have any ideas, please come speak to me. I'll give you my card. And I'm actually shooting off overseas tomorrow, but I'll be back at the end of the month and happy to line up a meeting to hear your business.
Hello, I'm Debbie. I'm originally from Minnesota, which is in the middle of the United States. Every Israeli asks me if it's near New York. It's not. Nothing like New York. Until 5 years ago, I had no interest in being an entrepreneur, nor did I have an interest in living in Israel. I was working in Washington, D.C. I was doing my master's in political management at George Washington University. I was working as a political fundraising consultant with top-level Jewish senators and congressmen and moderate democratic organizations. And then I was in Boston one day for work. One of my clients made a little shidduch with an Israeli who happened to be there getting his master's degree. And I ended up in Israel about 10 months later. He was there on a one-year fellowship, which meant he had to come back. So either we were going to be long distance, DC to Israel, or I was going to do something completely crazy and to a country I'd never been to. Always was interested in. You know, I knew Israel existed, but but us in Minnesota, it's a very insulated community, and you know, people don't like you to go too far away, so we were never encouraged to explore coming to Israel. But I finished my master's degree, and even though I had plans to join one of the presidential campaigns, which were just kicking off at that time, I thought there's no better time to do something a little crazy and unplanned. So I moved here in September 2007, and I had no idea what I was going to do. I did not know the language, I did not know the culture, but I knew how to fundraise, at least for politicians. So I figured, let's give that a shot. So about 4 days after I moved here, I established Succesful, which is the independent contractor. And I figured I would do the same thing here that I did there, work with members of Knesset to help them raise money abroad. And luckily, one of the members of Kadima was a good friend of my fiance, and he had no idea what he was hiring me for. But he said, okay, I'll give her a few thousand shekels a month. And only after about 1 or 2 months did I realize they don't do political fundraising here. They've never done it before then, really, unless you were head of a party or a party itself. So I realized I had to diversify my income very quickly, or I was not going to make a living here. So the natural transition was to fundraise for nonprofits. There are a lot of nonprofits in Israel. There are a lot duplicating each other's work. There are a lot that are very running unprofessionally. But there are also a lot of really good causes out there that are, filling in gaps in society that the government should be filling, but they're not. Doing very innovative things, cultural things. So even though I had never done nonprofit fundraising before, I figured how different can it be. It was a little different, but it's all the same thing. It's relationship building. So I took, one main client, which was Olim. Familiar, they work with youth at risk all over the country. They had a base in New York, but never fundraised outside of New York. So that's what I did for them for 2 years. I helped them establish, cultivate, and maintain relationships in Chicago and Boston. And at the same time, working on the side for a few members of Knesset who started to understand the concept, and also some smaller nonprofits. The election for Knesset came and went, and we actually had a very successful campaign for the member I was working with. And so from that point forward, I had all the members of Knesset approaching me from certain parties that do fundraising, that have to run for their positions. So that part has been developing very quickly. And the nonprofit sector is a challenge in Israel. It's a challenge to work professionally. It's a challenge to get them to invest in a process. The whole concept here of you have to sit there, and I don't know what I'll be doing tomorrow. How can I predict what I need for next year? And I needed money yesterday for this project. Is challenging, but you find the gems, and you find the ones who understand the process, who